I have many other questions for them, but I think I'm going to ask our guests here to engage and tell us what is it that you haven't heard yet, or is there an argument you want to make?
Good morning. My name is Jared Huffley from Xinhua News Agency. My question goes to Jonathan regarding, not an accusation from myself, but I read about accusations that Facebook clicks on advertising, that many clicks are fake clicks or automated by software in the background. There are figures from around 20%, 30%. It's not really targeted clients who click these advertising, but it's automatic, an automatic algorithm behind this. Could you comment on this, please?
Sure. Well, we constantly have software in place to try to find any kind of company or even fake accounts on there. So I cannot really comment on this specific incident. How many there might have been, how many there might not have been. But what I personally do believe is, and I really believe that is, Facebook is actually, for the first time ever, a platform where you have real identities, right? If I think about me 10, 15 years ago, my username on the internet was, I think it was Quattro Formaggi. I don't know why. I think that was what I was called. I think I like cheese, whatever it was.
Or pizza.
Or pizza, exactly. That was how I was identified online. It was Quattro Formaggi. Today it's me with all my interests, with so many things that I care about. Today, if I think about identity online, identity on Facebook, every single song I listen to on my mobile phone automatically, without me clicking, sharing anything, automatically becomes part of my profile. The ads I see now are less and less, actually, at least for music, are less and less about what bands I like. They're actually about what kind of bands I've been listening to. So we're getting more and more information about people and people's identities. And I think it's a platform where you have extremely accurate information about people's identities. And I'm pretty confident that the vast majority are real people on there. There is some fake accounts, no doubt about that. But we have software in place, and we have just introduced new software to make sure that we try to identify those and kick them out of the system.
Just on that with the Facebook, from a radio point of view now, and especially with our Asian stations, we are really dedicated to, especially in our primetime shows, of having that stickiness with our audience via Facebook. So the breakfast show this morning with Malvika was very much driven by what they're doing and the content they're putting out via the transmitter, but also they're interacting with their listeners on Facebook while they're actually doing that. So that kind of protection of that listener for City 1016 is really important to us and works exceptionally well. Did you like that song? And you're getting instant feedback straight away.
Hi, my question's for Jonathan. How do you define, or how does Facebook define a fan? How do you define them in terms of psychographics?
So I think, someone becomes a fan if he decided that he likes your brand by clicking on, I like your brand, or I like your show, or I like a football club, whatever it is. I think what is important is, and that's something that, everyone in the world, all the brand companies, even football clubs, whoever it is, needs to understand is, by just having someone click and become a fan, that's not the end of the solution, right? You got to engage with these fans on a regular basis, right? It's not just about having a fan. You got to engage with them. You got to make sure that you also use media to make sure that these fans see your message on a regular basis. Because if you have people that decided that they're your fans, in all likelihood, they're your core customers and they're the ones that are spending most with you. However, just by becoming a fan, they will not necessarily see what you're saying. You also have to communicate with them on a regular basis, engage with them on a regular basis, and use media so they see your messages. Because just by being a fan, they will not necessarily see your messages because there's so much going on in their lives. Because they're friends, they have other interests, etc. So, very specifically, you become a fan. You're a fan if you clicked on the like button, but that's not the end of it. You got to communicate with them on a regular basis and to make sure that it works.
It's a very good question that you posed because in my previous role in New York, my job was to quantify human behavior, right? And obviously, I didn't do a good job because it's very hard to do that. But we took 18 months, and I'm not joking, 18 months to quantify the value of a fan rather than the quantification of definition of a fan. So I don't care how you define a fan. whether it's like or laying on a bed of coals. But what's the value of a fan? And we took the Facebook likes, and we understood the fact that it's less about the quantity. It's more about how the interactions do occur. And we found out that the brands that, to Jonathan's point, build that dialogue and that relationship will actually have a higher return, or less erosion, if you will, from the number of fans to the quality of the fans. But it's had nothing to do with the fans themselves, right? So it has to do more with the brands. So I would ask you the question of saying, next time you look at what's the definition of a fan, look at what a brand can do to ensure that the quality of a fan remains high.
Okay. So the brand's responsible?
Very much so. You've lost control as a brand, but you're responsible for ensuring that you engage in that relationship.
Okay. Can I ask another question?
If it is related to advertising, absolutely.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about, well, it's related to brands, which, we've talked a lot about word of mouth, which seems to be talked about in a positive context, which of course it can be. But what happens when the word of mouth is negative?
I think one of the interesting things, and I think what we've seen after the kind of the Arab Spring and all that, is the fact that not everybody who's talking about you just wants to get online and talk about how much they love you. And obviously the bigger the community gets, the harder that becomes to manage. And a lot of times, for a lot of people, it feels like you're the mayor of a village where everybody just wants to complain about you. And so you're seeing brands approaching this in different ways. There's a lot of people who've chosen to completely opt out of this, because it's a lot easier to go, we don't want to be a part of this social media thing because we don't particularly like criticism, or my boss won't like the fact that people are saying negative things. But a lot of organizations have really taken it head on. So you look at something like Standard Chartered, for example, like everybody hates their bank, right? I mean, hands up anybody who loves their bank. And the really interesting thing with a bank, they're not my client, by the way, but they're quite a good example of this, because the challenge that a bank has is that by default, they have hundreds of thousands of consumers. And by law, they can't talk to these people in public forums. So if you've got 500,000 credit card holders, even if 1% are dissatisfied, that's 5,000 people who are really unhappy with your service. And so what brands quite often have to do, what they've been doing is they've been very upfront with people to say, really sorry, but look, this Facebook page is here to add value, to do whatever it is. We can't really talk to you about what's happened with your credit card. Why don't you call person X? They're there to solve your problem. And quite often they'll kind of give it a name or give it a person, but you do have to be quite upfront and quite honest with people, because you simply can't bury a secret. So what you find is that if you have a good community with some of the brands that we manage, if you have a good community where you're responsive and you as the brand are being quite an active, helpful part of the community, quite often your fans will jump in for you sometimes and be like, come on dude, like, why are you saying this, blah, blah, blah. And, we see this every day. So I think really with brands, it's accept the fact that you are going to get ripped apart by a lot of people. Just be sincere and be yourself, because that's all you can really be.
And again, the key thing, and again, back to my numbers life, the key thing is not about the know-how, right? So how do they feel about you, but why? And that becomes less of a net promoter score, if your question is related to that in terms of positive or negative. It becomes more in terms of an open-ended question. Managing that is going to be crazy, but if you do, you'll be able to understand why do they actually feel negative about me, and then you can start to readdress it. Now, as a bank, you may not be able to do this in an open forum, but you can start to do it on a personal level when they actually walk into your teller, if they ever do, and actually work on it from a face-to-face perspective.
From the perspective of providing content, this is also extremely useful, because although it's subjective and you have to go through a process of refinement and analysis, your consumers, your readers, are telling you what they like, what they don't like. It can inform your future decisions in terms of what your content is, what direction your content will go in, and it will allow you to tailor it towards specific market segments. So although that's difficult to place a financial value on, it's nonetheless an interesting kind of intangible that can have a value as you move forwards.
I'm just going to pitch in here as well. So we do a lot of work in the social space in measuring, monitoring sentiment and so on. There was a piece of analysis that came out of the US from Nielsen, which suggested that for every one negative comment, it takes 5 positive comments to mitigate it, to change it. So Having said that, we also do a lot of work with the TV networks here, and we had a very interesting story from one of the TV networks where during one of their live entertainment shows, suddenly tweets start appearing that that there's a light bulb, that one of the light bulbs has blown, and it's causing problems in a corner of the stage, and people can't see what's going on. Very quickly, it went to an ad break, came back, the light bulb was back on. So to your point, you have this real-time feed about what's happening. Well, I recently spoke to Nielsen, with the research provider for the London Olympics this year. Again, fantastic opportunity. Some of the things they got to be involved with sounded amazing, but social media understanding and measurement was such a huge part of that. On almost a minute-by-minute basis, they had a team of people who were observing what was being said on the different social networks, so that they could respond to events and to situations that were rising before journalists could pick up on it. And so hence, I mean, issues or challenges that were coming up were kept very quiet because they were resolved so quickly. So I kind of agree with what we've been saying, which is that you need to engage it. Negative comments will come, but actually it's a way to get better for a brand.
Start there and then.
For Nadim, you mentioned you were speaking about the human behavior. How do you actually, for probably most of you, how do you deal with the fact that the UAE and the region is a transient population and it's not homogeneous in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, very good question. So we rely on technology. Let's be very pragmatic. So when 15, 20 years ago, when you had diaries and you had face-to-face research collection, if you and I didn't speak the same languages, Merry Christmas. I mean, you're not going to have any content gathered in that in that research session. Today, we rely on technology. Translates very easily. We partner up with a company called YouGov. That's done very well in terms of political polling, both in the UK and other areas of Western Europe, and they've dissipated their services to 15 or 20 markets now, globally. We've done everything from language barrier changes to migration. And when we use the word migration, we think about relocation forever. And I think the people on the panel show you that we haven't relocated forever to one place, that we're very transient ourselves. So we understand the fact that if you're here for a certain moment of time. But that gives you the challenges of, do you build a brand for the short term, i.e. promotional, quick value changes, or for the long term, brand equity and so forth. Handling Pepsi is one of these issues in terms of a transient population. We have people that come in with the heritage of Coca-Cola, unfortunately, and we don't like that. So we have to make sure that we kind of change that perception. So we're very much in tune to that. We rely on technology to answer your question very crisply.
Sorry, could I just ask a question? This is Pritesh from eMatters. I just want to find out if you think that social media has become the new gold rush. In many ways, corporates, institutions, everyone seems to want to attack social media, but maybe without as much direction or understanding of social media and what they need to achieve as as they need to. So, with that in mind, what do you think is the role of social media agencies and the services they provide to to the corporates, institutions, etc., in achieving their objectives, as opposed to the financial return objective of social media agencies as a separate entity?
I think one of the interesting things with social media that we're finding as an agency is that everybody's kind of coming to us and saying, we want a social media, or we want a Facebook. And it's like, okay, great, but what are you actually going to do with it? And I think one of the things that people are realizing is just how much it costs to do it well. Because we kind of refer to social media quite often as the kind of the tip of the iceberg, where you can have a Facebook page or a Twitter page, and it's free. But the reality is they're not going to be particularly good or successful unless you have that 90% underneath the surface that's actually pushing that 10% up. And a lot of that comes down to your policies, and quite often, and to moderation, everything is, but quite often the most expensive piece of this is the content, kind of echoing what a lot of the guys are saying, is that if you're not providing stuff that is genuinely interesting, entertaining, educational, or of value, why are you there? So if you're talking to a B2C audience, what are you doing to entertain them besides just saying, good morning, who feels like drinking my coffee today? You've got to do more in terms of games or entertainment. And similarly, if you're a business on social media, what are you doing to actually generate new business, to either educate your customers, establish yourself as a thought leader? So But to come back to another one of your questions about what's the role of the social media agency, I think the challenge is that we all seem to think we're social media agencies now, because the PR guys I've always spoken to stakeholders and communicated, so they're in charge. We're the digital guys, we're the nerds, so we should be in charge. The media buyer controls the message, so he should be in charge. The ad agency is responsible for the brand, so they should be in charge. So who's really in charge? It's an interesting one. It's something that we're all trying to figure out at the same time, and everybody seems to have a different recipe for it.
Thank you very much for your answer. If I could just say a quick, could I ask one more question? It's actually regarding the theory of the store owner in a village that talks to people. I love that analogy there. But what I did want to say relates back to the previous question. Is we used to take our references or make our purchase decisions based on a store owner recommending to us what product we should purchase. That means or implies that the store owner has an understanding of each brand and has been through the decision-making process for us and then can then advise us accordingly. However, when you have social media agencies in this market who are representing a brand on behalf of the brand and don't necessarily understand the brand messaging fully, I'm not talking to any specific social media agency, please don't mistake me, but how does that work? I mean, how can a non-invested party correctly represent with passion a brand to become successful and gain that sort of followership or fellowship that you need to convert fans to friends?
I think it's really interesting. A couple of comments have been made about people understanding brands. Now, of course, that is really important, but I think it's equally, if not more important, for brands to understand people. Where do brands fit into people's life? When are they going to pick you up? Why are they going to pick you up? At what time are they going to pick you up? And why are they going to take money out of their pocket and pay for you in the first place? So I think the storekeeper actually needs to understand the person more than they necessarily need to understand the brand, I think. Just my point of view. And actually, I just wanted to say as well, on your first question about social media, it wasn't necessarily about social media agencies, but more of a comparison about what I see. So from UK to here, here is so exciting in social media. It's grown at a rate that I think the UK wouldn't have believed possible. I see more advanced uses of social media here than the UK have even contemplated. I think many of the media brands in the UK, much as they did with online 10, 15 years ago, kind of shoved it in a corner and said, well, we'll deal with that when we have to, maybe we will never have to. And then found that it had kind of overtaken them. But here, there was a story in one of the English language newspapers a few weeks ago, where an Emirati couple had their car stolen and their child was in the back seat. So the police go onto Twitter and put out details of the car and where it was seen. 2 hours later, they've tracked down the car, they've arrested the people, the baby's safe, everybody's happy. If you could find a police force in the UK that know how to use Twitter, in the face of the London riots, there's your example, I'd be very, very surprised. So I think social media here is so exciting and offers a lot of opportunity.
I think if I may comment on the reason, part of the reason why social media is so advanced here, and I think because of the leaders of this country, they are ahead. They are all utilizing social media, and they're ahead of everybody. Yeah. And by the way, that tweet was retweeted by the foreign minister, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, which of course made it immediately available almost to everybody who has hundreds of thousands of followers.
Do you see any opportunity for something to be done in an innovative way that maybe starts leading the way in this part of the world? Or are we just going to sit back as usual and wait for somebody to figure it out somewhere else? And then, because we have demographically a pretty unique situation, yet we don't seem to be doing anything to take advantage of it.
As content providers, and of course with print as well, bring it on. Why can't this region actually lead the way on the whole mobile opportunity? We've spoken numbers here that are extraordinary, and I'm sure from looking at the numbers here that you've seen, Sarah, compared to a population breakdown of the UK, the numbers here are extraordinary. So there is no reason why we can't, and that's really where probably data is going to drive everything here, that the data is trusted and hand on heart real, But I'm with you, Karim, that there really is an opportunity here for this region, particularly in the Middle East, to really drive that. You know, this could be the location that really cracks the code on that.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I mean, we've spoken about data and how reliable the data is, so the stats I'm about to quote you may or may not be correct, but broadly, you know, we live in a region of more than 300 million people. The GCC potentially by 2020 is projected to be worth $3 trillion alone in terms of its trade. So there is limitless potential here for us. I think, speaking personally now, not on behalf of a media owner, but as a media consumer, perhaps one of the things that I've been guilty of over the years is I've perceived the region first from the perspective of Dubai and then from the perspective of the UAE. But look at this broader region that's out there. Look at the size of the population. Look at the amount of natural resource and money that is out there, and the potential is limitless, I would suggest.
I think, as you just said, like, we've been talking about mobile advertising for so many years, and it's always been next year, next year, next year, next year, and it's never happened. I don't know, my gut tells me now we are about to get to a point where it's going to become more relevant. I know that for Facebook it is extremely relevant for everything we just mentioned. If you think about it, you know, you have, I don't know the exact number, I think you have 1 to 2 billion people in the world that use desktops. And you have 5 billion people using the mobile phone. And in this part of the world, it's probably, the skew is even higher than that. And in a couple of years' time, you'll have people, everyone that uses desktop will also use a mobile phone. But you'll have a large amount of people, countries like Egypt, etc., that will use the mobile phone, that will access the internet through the mobile phone, that have never ever used a desktop. So it is going to be huge, I believe, and I think that the challenge is going to be measurement, but also how do we provide marketing solutions on the mobile phone that work, that are not intrusive, and that are not rejected by the consumers. Because the challenge is, you know what, it's just a lot smaller, right? And you don't want to have a pop-up suddenly there. It's just a lot smaller. You have just less space to work with. So I think that's the other challenge, finding marketing solutions that work. And I know for Facebook it's been a big focus. We just, you know, kind of last week or so, we announced you know, our mobile solutions as well. And now you can also advertise on the mobile phone via something that we call sponsored stories. So as a user in the newsfeed, you might see stories from the brands that you like, or because a friend of yours might have interacted with the brand, you can sponsor that to make sure that enough people see that message. And it's part of the user flow, it's part of your newsfeed, which is the best real estate on Facebook. So for Facebook, it's a big topic and a very important focus for us. And I think for the region it will overall as well.
I mean, we're as frustrated as you are in terms of why isn't mobile picking up. Several barriers. Number one, the people that hold the credit card at the client side aren't really the mobile aficionados. They're not the natives. They're the immigrants that have migrated to smartphones. They're not the folks who ask the question, what is a desktop? Well, you know? So that's one thing, the comfort level of taking decisions, despite the numbers. The comfort level, that the magic side, the gut feel of taking the decision is pretty hard. The second thing is that, to your point, the size of the screen is pretty hard to digest. You know, now that Samsung has the 6.5-inch tablet that you put on your head to speak, which is very awkward if you see someone walking down, even though it's a fantastic device. You can see how we need to get to a point where we hit those barriers down. The third thing that I can think about is in terms of you're only as important as the problem you solve, right? And if you're not able to solve a problem of moving metal, moving cans, moving bags, moving anything that you're selling, then you don't get high up on that totem pole. And then you become the 30th meeting that happens right before we go into 2013 AOP planning, and you're like, you know what, let's just put $5 into mobile. Fantastic. So $5 does what on mobile? Even though the recommendation happened 30 months ago or 30 meetings ago, where it's like, listen, we have to go with a video neutral planning approach. And then everybody's so excited that once it comes to the problem that you're solving, it seems that people go after the comfort level. And again, as we have the CMOs in this region and anywhere in the world are in the 30s, 40s, even 50s sometimes, it's hard for them to understand how a mobile native navigates the apps and lives based on that 4-inch screen or 3-inch screen. And that's where I think the #1 barrier is. It's less about the creativity. If you go to any creative agency or any media agency, we have lots of solutions. Selling it to the right person, getting it to the right person who's going to sign on it is pretty hard. And I think that's our #1 challenge.
I think targeting is going to be really interesting going forward, because I think what's happened is I think the mobile platform has offered a lot of traditional broadcasters first an element of measurement that they never had before. If you look at broadcast media, for them, being able to actually put some real numbers to the advertisers in terms of the number of people you're attracting is a brand new world. And just wait till they can actually target you, because the really exciting things about these devices is that they're incredibly personal, incredibly private. They're always connected to the web, and they always know where you are. Like it's like a marketer's dream. So sooner or later, we'll kind of, we've managed to now take step 1 with measurement. And I think really the step 2 we'll see eventually with companies like yours, Steve, is going to be targeting.
And to endorse that as well, we're just not using this data just for enhancing the advertising revenue. We're a commercial network. We're also using it to make decisions on programming. So if we see a massive influx on Facebook usage on one of our stations in a particular show that's off Broadway, is not peak time, well, we look into that program and see what the hell are we doing there right. And so we're actually using it to make programming decisions going forward. It really is not just about an advertising mechanism for
Steve,
us.
I would like to ask you maybe to comment on something very specific. A year ago, Aaron went ahead and launched a Farsi-speaking radio. People thought you were crazy. And but I think it was
the first time.
I think it was an instant hit. And how then are you benefiting from it? Are you able to drive advertising, and are you going digital with it? So just tell us, because it's a new thing you've just launched.
The Farsi station is Radio Sherman 93.4, and the key to the success of this station is the research we did. We did nearly 2.5 years of research on the Farsi-speaking community living here in the UAE. And let me clarify, that's all we're interested in, is the Farsi-speaking community living here in the UAE. What we set out of it, I've got Amy sitting here who led that research project. What we set out to do, or what we had in our minds of what the audience was completely different to what the outcome of all the research that we put into this. We were going to target an audience, and I thought it was going to be incredibly conservative. But what we ended up delivering from a format point of view was a very now-sounding station and very upbeat. And that came from researching. So any radio station or radio format anywhere in the world needs this kind of research first. In this region in particular, we see other opportunities as well, but we're not going to push the button on a new radio station until we actually do the research. It's just so crucial to the success. That station is performing way beyond our expectations, and the advertising industry here have really embraced it, and that's both from the local Farsi-speaking community right through to McDonald's, etc., have come on the station. So yeah, we're pretty happy. There's a few smiles on our faces with that one, but the expectation is now we just lift the bar even higher.
Okay.
The cost of online and having access to internet, the telecom providers are making it cheaper. More than half of the population in the Middle East is less than the age of 25. So we have a young population. We adopted the technologies that we are being bombarded with. They're born into it. So the usage, the adoption rate, all of that's going to get quicker, right? So my question is, with all those things in mind, do you guys think that mobile marketing is going to be the next big thing in the next 3 to 5 years? Just like social media, in the past took us maybe 5 to 10 years to get to the point where we're adopting it, it's coming of age, and we're trying to sort our heads out. But do you think that mobile marketing will be the next kind of medium or leap that we're going to take post social media?
We need to, again, and the panel has said this several times, we need to differentiate between the content and the platform. Mobile, this is mobile, right? So anything that is able to be social, local, mobile network, or the Solomon network, it's not less about the device. So my answer to you is it's less about the device, and it's more about the content and the communication and the dialogue that you have from an integrated manner with the consumer. If the consumer sees your brand at the checkout counter only, you know what? That's not top of mind, and it'll be a very small propensity for he or she to actually pull out their cash to fork over the money for your brand. But if they see you throughout their lives, in a less intrusive manner, so to Kareem's point, why is mobile not working? Well, because it's pretty private. I don't want to wake up in the morning with 15 messages from brands I don't even know, or think that know me, even worse, right? So I think your question would have been valid in 2008, 2009 when we're getting on this wave. The wave is done. Mobile is now here. It's been around for a couple of years. So I think it's not the next. It's been here for a while. It's just a matter of how do you capitalize on it and how do you again do it. It's about the know-how. I mean, it's a balancing the know-how with the know-why. Why do I use mobile? Why should we invest in mobile?
In terms of I was wondering, in terms of your the money that your clients spend, how much they spend on minute? What do you mean minute? How much?
I don't have the numbers on me, but I can tell you that it's more than that.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, again, mobile investment has been more of a tactical than a strategic approach. We want to elevate discussion to a strategic level.
And so is that education for the clients, or how are you going to do it?
It's all the barriers we just talked about.
Yeah.
So I think we have to address it not only in terms of the people at the client side who take decisions, but also the folks on the mobile side. I mean, let's talk to the providers and see how they can be nimble. So the agility has to happen from everyone's side, right?
And you've just come from New York, so when you say minute, is it minute there as well?
It's relative, yes. So again, we're not talking about mobile becoming the lion's share of investments. We're talking about mobile getting the righteous level that it should deserve, being being the number one trusted device that you have. I mean, who sleeps with a laptop next to them? I hope no one does. But most of us sleep with our mobile phone next to each other, next to us.
Well, if you have three, you put them next to each other, right?
I'm very much with my mobile phone, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean that's where, again, globally, mobile advertising, you can vouch for this from Nielsen perspective, is minute. But we're not talking about this hitting critical mass. It will never be in the double digit unless there's a massive ban on TV.
I think it hasn't been figured. I think it has not yet been figured out. That's what it is. We have not figured out how to advertise on mobile without being intrusive, without being rejected. It's an issue of, I mean, with all the brains, the creative brains that exist in the industry, we haven't yet figured it out.
But once you figure it out, I highly doubt, and I hope I'm corrected in 10 years' time or 5 years' time or next year, I highly doubt you'll hit double digits. Just because the size of the screen, again, you're as important as the problem you solve. A cinema screen, a TV screen, now the 55s as being standard, solves a bigger problem, a more social problem than people congregating on a 4-inch screen. I mean, the 6 of us can't actually watch a video on 4 inches. So that's where I think we have to be very pragmatic and ask of mobile what mobile can provide, and not ask of mobile what TV can provide, because each one has a role.
I think as content providers too, our sell to clients and agencies needs to improve as well. Like going in there and just selling on ratings or just selling on we're number one, you can't talk like that anymore. You need to understand that do want to impact this particular audience and they want to do it across this particular time. You need to get a lot closer to understanding what the end result is that the client is looking for as well. The gentleman that was talking about mobile before, I think mobile will increase. I'm not sure about the percentage levels, but I think with any medium, we've got to start talking about integration. So when we're delivering our solutions to clients and agencies, it's got to be an integrated solution across traditional radio, across print, across whatever, but it mixes in, and then by understanding the client's needs, using all these different platforms, I think we're going to get some dynamic results.
The most successful brands and media channels, media brands, will be those that understand how they're different. What differentiates them from the next channel, from the next brand, from the next can, from the next motor? What makes them different, and how do I take my audience, this person, on a journey through my communications, and some of those will be with their own brand, internal communication, or external, but I mean their own marcoms, but actually and then some of it will be paid for advertising, and above the line, below the line, and so on. But how do I take my audience on that journey so that at the other end they're still holding my hand, and that we're still walking down the street together? And that's all about integration, and that's all about information. And to come back to the point you were making about the Farsi station you have, where you started and where you ended were completely different. And what changed that was understanding the audience. So it just comes back to we need to understand our audience. And the more you understand the audience, the more success you will see.
Has new media become in the marketing mix now? I mean, new media, social, digital, and mobile. And which traditional media do you think is more vulnerable to cannibalization of business? I mean, if you see a lot of clients shifting to digital and social and mobile, which traditional media is paying for that loss?
Yeah, I'll take that first up if you don't mind. I mean, how crucial are they? They're part of every plan. So few or seldom do we have any plans if the business or the brand doesn't need it, that we don't invest into new media, right? So I think it's part of it. So again, the question is, I think, a bit dated in terms of how important they are. Now, in terms of cannibalization, again, it depends on the audience, right? So if you look at the 25 and below, to the gentleman's point about 50% of the region being younger than 25, then obviously you'll start to look at certain channels or certain platforms that aren't as social in real life, right? So balancing the street social with the screen social is important. So when people actually meet online, but now they actually want to meet on the streets. So 15 years ago, where the online world took us from the streets and put us on online chats with people we don't even know, now they're taking us back and actually telling us, okay, you know what, you haven't seen this person for the past 8 months, go have coffee. And then I think that's where different age brackets will dictate where the cannibalization happened. But again, I don't think the cannibalization is happening too much, because let's not forget that the whole media scene is actually growing. So the pie is growing, the slices may, on a percentage level, shrink, but the slices themselves on absolute level are actually either at parity or growing.
I was just going to add to that, the numbers that I've seen, that I've been looking at, suggest that to a certain degree, and this wouldn't be novel to this region, this has been happening globally for some time now, suggesting that digital is hitting newspapers harder than it's hitting other media channels in terms of ad spend. I think newspapers have, in particular, have a big challenge ahead of them. And actually, we were talking about this before the session started. When you look at something like the Financial Times or the business model of The Economist, they have very successfully migrated to pay businesses online, getting people to pay for their content online in this world where people think everything should be free. But what makes them different is their content. They are completely niche. You cannot get the Financial Times or The Economist kind of reporting and analysis anywhere else, and so people will pay for it. The challenge for other newspapers, newspapers without that niche, is that this information is now freely available on the web, and so digital spends are I mean, frankly, they've been killing them in the UK. It's not quite that bad here yet, but I mean, the signs are there that it may happen.
If I can give another UK anecdote to that, I'm a classic example of that. I used to read the Times online. I now don't, because I believe I can get the same content from the Telegraph and the Guardian, and I don't have to pay for it. One interesting quote from the Guardian, and I'm afraid I can't remember who made the quote, but fairly recently they said, "We don't believe that the paywall is working for News International. If, however, it does start to work, we reserve the right to copy them, because clearly they'll start to make lots of money." So that's obviously how their thinking's going.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben Flanagan from The National. Question for Nadine. The Arab world has one of the lowest advertising spends anywhere on earth, a few dollars per person per year. Do you think the rather idiosyncratic way advertising is sold here, especially in the TV industry, is holding the industry back? Do you think the media representation model is doing harm to the industry as a whole?
It's a very good question, and I think it's one of the factors, right? So if you look at the US, you have our friends in the TV world that actually do something called the upfront in April and March. Mainly May sometimes, they've been extending it. But then you lock your next year's budget in May. Talk about handicap. Fine, efficiency advantage, but handicap in terms of flexibility and agility. That means for the coming 8 months, you shouldn't go to the office actually, because 70% of your money is locked in, supposedly. But it's one of the factors. I think the number one reason why per capita investments aren't really high in the industry here is stability. Let's not forget that out of the 19 markets in the MENA, a couple of them just had a massive Arab revolt a couple of years ago, or are still happening right now. So those are the ones that have the highest number of people. I mean, other than Saudi, which is stable at 25 million, 26, 28 million people, as a stable country, we need to understand that once you liberate these markets, once free economy reigns, and the invisible hand does balance supply and demand, you will be able to have a higher per capita investment. But yes, one of the main reasons would be the fact that we need to have partners in the industry, not owners, suppliers, agencies, and clients. Those three words need to evaporate, and partnership needs to reign in terms of plowing back into the industry. We need to grow the pie. I keep saying this, instead of growing the slice. So I don't care if channel A and channel B fighting against certain slices, as long as the pie is growing for everybody, brands included, businesses, and us in partnership, then I think everybody will be happy. Consumers are willing to go after that. Again, bombarding of messages. I mean, do you want to see another message? Ask yourself that. I kind of don't want to. And if I do want to see the right message, I'd like to see the right message at my own time. So I'm happy with the lack of clutter. If you compare it to Italy, or to the UK, or to the US, good luck. I mean, good luck at getting out of your house without getting 15 brands in your mind. So I kind of don't mind it as a consumer. As a professional, I think that they are one of the key top 5 or top 3 reasons why the industry hasn't progressed as we want them to be. But again, it's our fault as a whole of not having a common congruent goal and a common congruent goal of growing the pie itself. So I'm sorry for the macro answer, but that's honestly how I feel in terms of the ability. But in the region, we're not behind. I mean, let's not forget that the biggest market for now, the US, does have this whole thing called the upfront, and it's dissipating into digital. So right now we've actually OMD pioneered it in 2009 or 10 to have an upfront for the online world. So then more than 70% of your money is actually locked in May. That's pretty scary.
Thank you.
My question is relating to targeting through social media. Users today have become inundated with feeds and messages and clutter. So my question is, how targeted do you think it will be in the future? Will a business who has a fan page be able to target this post to potential clients, existing clients, loyal clients? Are we headed in that direction?
Yes, I actually think yes. I think the targeting is going to get better and better every single day, because the identity that we build off people online is becoming more and more complete. If you think about, for instance, as an example, Facebook, right? As a platform, how we started, it was person at the center, and it was the friends around it, right? That was how we initially defined the identity of the person. Then we introduced the like button. The like button gave you a lot of additional information about a person because you liked certain brands, etc. That also helped for targeting. What we then introduced was something which were verbs or actions. So whatever you actually do, me listening to a song, reading an article, if integrated with Facebook, watching a movie on Netflix, checking into a restaurant, all of these pieces become part of your identity online. And you will be able to target that in the future. As I mentioned earlier, for music, the targeting I'm getting is not which brands I like anymore. That was kind of Facebook 2 years ago. I'm actually now getting what music I've been listening to yesterday. So as our identity becomes more and more complete online, the targeting will get better and better as well. And obviously do that without sharing individuals, people information, but it's become more and more complete.